I'm really glad I didn't decide to film this review on the day that I saw the film, because I was just a mess. My brother was laughing at me so much because I just came out with tears, like literally such red swollen eyes because I was crying so much. So today I'm going to be doing a sort of review of both this book, A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness, and sort of my reflections on the film as well that I saw the other day. I'd seen this book pop up so many times, and I also saw the author. He came to my university a couple of years ago and he was talking about this book, and I've also read another book of his that he signed, and I talked to him and for a little bit, and it was really interesting hearing the things that he had to say about this book. For anyone who isn't aware, this book was an original idea by this woman here, Siobhan Dowd. Unfortunately, she passed away before she was able to complete the book, or even start writing it, I think, and so Patrick Ness took the idea and decided to make a book out of it. This edition has really beautiful illustrations. It is illustrated by Jim Kay, and the illustrations in here are very creepy, they're very powerful and dark, and they give a real sense of foreboding and dread, but they're also very beautiful. So the story of this book and the film centres around a 12-year-old boy called Connor. His mother has cancer and he is struggling very much to sort of cope with that fact. He's bullied at school and he relies on his art and his imagination to basically see him through his day-to-day life. His problems are too big to face alone, and his torment awakens an old yew tree by his house, which is the monster in the title and the monster that you can see here. It's supposed to be quite a intimidating encounter. But what's interesting is Connor is not frightened really in the slightest. He's more like, why are you here? And that's something that the audience sort of feel as well. It's less scary and frightening and more intrigue. What I loved about this book is that it explores the truths that we convince ourselves of, and it teaches the reader to face up to sadness and grief, much like Inside Out did a couple of years ago, that Pixar film. It did something very interesting in that it made you face up to sadness and sort of negative emotions, rather than a lot of media that tells you to run away from them and always be happy. It's sort of saying it's okay to be sad, and it's needed sometimes. This book is all about sort of embracing pain and showing how it's sort of good and healthy to be sad and sometimes scared. What I think works the best about this book is that it's set from the point of view of a 12-year-old boy, and I can't remember if it's a line in the book or a line from the film, but it's a beautiful line that the monster says, and it's about Connor, a boy too old to be a child but too young to be a man, and all these emotions that he's experiencing through having to deal with bullies, having to live with his sort of overbearing grandma, having to deal with his mother's illness. All these emotions are just way too powerful for someone so young and so overwhelming for him to process. On paper, the bullies, the sort of distant father figure, the stern grandma, it all sort of sets up a really conventional sort of coming of age story. But by the end, it's told so differently, it's like you've sort of never really read anything like it before. The film is a fantastic adaptation of the book, pretty much word for word, some scenes, definitely. I can only maybe think of one thing that they left out, and it's not even that important, in that Connor in the book actually has a sort of girl at school who sort of looks out for him and can understand him, whereas in the film he was literally on his own. He had nobody in school, and I think that was pretty much the only thing that they changed. The film was very, very faithful to the book, and I think that came with Patrick Ness actually writing the screenplay for the film as well, but pretty much scene for scene, word for word sometimes, it was just done really well. In the book and the film, the monster comes and tells Connor 3 stories, and in the book they are described wonderfully, but in the film they are done even better. In the film, the stories are brought to life through watercolour animation, which sort of matches up with Connor's art style as well. And because the tales are sort of not fairy tale-ish, but that sort of vibe to it, it just really, really works well. And the morals of the story are really different, and they are something to think about, and something that's not black and white, something that's very grey, and that is something that Connor has to think about in this book. When it came to the film, the lad who played Connor, I can't remember his name, I will find it and put it somewhere on the screen now. He was fantastic. You're always worried when you see a film with a child actor front and centre that he can carry a whole film, but he was amazing. You completely believed in his performance. He was totally believable as a 12-year-old child. He wasn't perfect. He was angry and sad, but at the same time he was very mature. Same as Liam Neeson as the monster. I don't know if the film was sort of going for a monster that was really frightening, and I don't think that's what the book is necessarily going for either. It's called A Monster Calls, and I suppose it is a monster, but there's never any sort of threat really that the monster's going to do anything to Connor. And I think Liam Neeson's performance, it came across even more friendly in a way. It wasn't like one of those films like E.T. or something like that where the kid and the thing have a massive bond. I don't know if that was just sort of Liam Neeson's lovely Irish accent, I'm not sure. I don't know why I'd found him to be a lot more friendly actually. See, this is why I should have just thought about it before doing this review. He tells him what he needs to hear and he gives him lessons that he needs to learn. It's one of those tales that no matter how you take it in, I think everybody can get something from it. So whether you read this version of the book with all the beautiful illustrations in it, if you just read the normal book without the illustrations, if you watch the film, if you read the audiobook, I think everybody can take something from it and everybody can relate to it in one way or another. Whether you've had to face massive problems as a young child that you feel like you can't deal with, if you've had to deal with a parent being ill, or just in general sort of everyday things like falling out with family members or dealing with school bullies. I think everybody can take something from this book and this film, and it's just fantastic. It's one of those rare circumstances where I don't say you have to read the book before the film, because I think the film is so true to the book's message that you don't need to read the book. But, you know, always read the book, basically. What I'm saying is just read both of them. Just read the book, go and see the film, and just cry your eyes out, because that's what I did. So that's it for my review. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know this is nothing new. Everybody and their aunt has reviewed this book and this film probably, but I just wanted to reflect on it because I just really loved it, and it was I think it's the first film that I've watched in 2017 that I haven't seen before anyway, and it's just a great way to start the new year. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.